you can't carry a whole lot of cure with you. The best thing you can do is not get hurt to begin with. You can't always help that, but, you know, like people climbing to the top of Bad Branch Falls, etc., they're asking to fall, they're asking to get hurt. And the 4 major causes of death in the outdoors, number 1 is falls. So, you know, you see these people like Man vs. Wild, etc., where he'll climb down the face of a cliff on a vine, but get where he's going. He's asking for trouble. You know, you're better off to go around. Second cause of death, heart attacks. You get guys like me that's used to being in the woods for years, get a little injured, you're not able to get up there anymore, put on weight, and you think you can do what you did when you were 30. Doesn't work anymore. So heart attack's second cause of death in the woods. Got drowning is the third cause of death. You're around a lake right now. Be careful. Third cause of death in the outdoors. And fourth is exposure. 2 different types of exposure, heat and cold. Which one do you think kills more people?
Heat.
Heat. Heat is the number 4 cause of death in the outdoors. Cold's number 5. So you got to be aware of those things, pace yourself, know your limitations. Now that's the ounce of prevention that prevents you from having to carry a 50-pound Stokes basket into the woods with you when you and your buddies go hunting. I'll show you kind of what I've got in my pack that I carry with me in the car. This is something I keep all the time. If I get a search and rescue call, I've got it with me. Carry paracord, lots of things that you can use paracord for. But first aid, you can use it for building a travois, you can use it for tying things together that you need to tie together. You cannot use it for a tourniquet, too narrow. Something else, most pack lists that you see tell you to carry a bandana. Much better than a bandana, carry a shemagh or shemagh. A shemagh is much bigger than a bandana, but it's real thin, still doesn't take up a lot of room in your pack. You can use this to make a tourniquet. You just roll it and tie it around a couple inches above the bleeding wound, make a tourniquet out of it. You can use it for a bandage. After you dress a wound, you can tie this around it to hold the dressing in place. If you got a broken arm, take this end of it, this corner, tie a knot in it. Just a high pitch is fine. Like that. Tie these 2 ends together. Probably have to have more than a high pitch. You'll have to have like a square knot probably, or a granny knot in this. But you put that over somebody's head, put their arm in here, put this over their head, and you've got an arm sling for somebody that has an injured shoulder, injured humerus, something like that. So it's a good thing to carry in your pack for basic first aid. Doesn't weigh anything to amount to anything, but it's worth its weight in gold when you need it. This is also prevention as well as cure. Wrap this thing around your head, like they do in a lot of the desert countries. It'll keep the sun off of you, keep you from getting bee sting, mosquito bit, whatever. You can also clean your water with it, basically. You can't get it really clean, but you can take moss or something like that, roll it up in this shemagh, fold it up, twist it, and wring the water out of it. It filters a lot of the bigger stuff out of it. So good thing to carry in your pack for a lot of different reasons. These are the first aid kits that I carry. Ultra lightweight. They don't have anything for a real major injury in them, but the little aggravating things that can really cause you problems in the woods, skin irritations, etc. If you got one of these, you got everything that's going to take care of it. You know, blister on your heel, it's got mold skin, it's got some basic things like aspirin, diphenhydramine, etc.
Where do you get those?
I get these down in Whitesburg. There's an outdoor shop down at the foot of Pine Mountain called Pine Mountain Outfitters, and that's where I get these. We also buy them for search and rescue, so I've got 2 of them in there. This one's been opened because I had to use it on an old man who got lost, actually wandered away from home, and ended up laying in a creek half the night. Another thing here, this is called a Cheeto Sam Active. These are blood stopper bandages. This is a 4x4. Again, it's not going to do a real big wound, but it'll do something small. Doesn't weigh anything. You can pass it around there and look at it. The only thing you have to be careful of on those blood stopper bandages is they generate heat when they get wet. They can, some of them can actually burn you. Don't have a lot of experience with that one. I carry this. You don't need to carry that in the woods with you generally. I carry it just because I'm on search and rescue. If you're with somebody else, it may be better to carry something like this with you. You can order these online, different places, galls, etc. This is just a little barrier for CPR, for mouth to mouth. I don't recommend mouth to mouth to anybody, mouth to mask is the way you go. So you just open that up, put it over the person's face, and blow through it. That gives you a mask, a little barrier there to keep you from getting anything. If you have never done CPR, if you've never bagged somebody with a bag valve mask, if you've never had to give rescue breaths, something a lot of people don't know is when you do that, people throw up. Common thing. And that can make you so sick you can't continue with what you're doing if you don't have a barrier. This got a little one-way valve on it, keeps you from getting the vomitus back in your mouth when you do. Good thing to carry in the backwards. This one, this is a Walmart special. This is a 5-foot to 7-foot tarp. Works great if you're going to make a trap wire. It's got eyelets, grommets in both sides. Take a couple of saplings that are like 10 to 12 feet long. Spreader bars, forks on each end of the sticks, about 2.5 feet wide. Tie that between them. Use your paracord to tie it between those two sticks. That'll let you drag somebody out of the woods instead of carrying them. This guy right here, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but he's in fire rescue too, and he'll tell you that if you have to pick somebody up over your shoulders and carry them, it's hard to do. Even a 120-pound woman, you pick her up and throw her over your shoulders and bring her down a set of stairs. By the time you get to the bottom, you're ready to rest. So, carry something like this. You can drag somebody a long way to get them out of the woods. The main thing, though, that you're going to face are smaller irritations, smaller injuries and irritations. So I'm going to start with the least serious, and I'll go toward the most serious and we'll see how far we get with it. Or the most common, I guess, and go toward less common. Sunburn. Any of you, most of you out here are in the outdoors, you know, keep yourself covered, etc. There's also a weed that I'll tell you about. I've looked everywhere for it and can't find it right now. It blooms from May to October in this area, but apparently it's late this year. I can't find it anywhere. It's good for sunburn. It's good for poison ivy.
Are there some in the campsite?
I'm sorry?
There's some down in the campsite.
Oh, is there some down there? Okay. Yeah. Jewelweed. When it blooms, it has an orange bloom. It's kind of a trumpet shape that hangs down. Looks like a little bell kind of in a way. You can mash that up, rub it on the poison ivy, rub it on sunburn. Helps with all kinds of little minor irritations. And that's something you don't have to carry. With poison ivy, if you think you've gotten in it, wash as soon as you can. Get that oil off your skin, as much of it as you can, and then rub it with the jewelweed. It may stop a lot of the problems for you. Another problem for hikers especially is blisters on your feet. A blister can put you down if you're walking for a long distance. A good thing to carry in your pack that I don't have, that I need to put in here, is a needle and thread. Just a sewing needle and some thread. Keep it in a good box so it doesn't get dirty. If you get a blister, you can stick that needle in the edge of the blister, drag the thread through it, and leave the thread. Cut it off on each side of that blister. That'll soak the moisture out of the blister and it'll keep it from closing back up again. So you just stick it through there, pull it through a little bit, clip both ends off, bandage it, pad it so it doesn't get worse again when you're hiking. Sprained ankles. Everybody has had a sprained ankle at some point. It can make it miserable if you're doing something like Pine Mountain Trail. If you don't know, Pine Mountain Trail starts at Breaks Interstate Park and it goes to Cumberland Gap. It's like 120 miles long. There are, of course, road crossings along the way. There are no road crossings between the Breaks and Pound Gap, which is probably, what, Chris, 30 miles, 35 miles? No road crossings. So if you're in there and you get a sprained ankle 15 miles in, guess what? You're going to have to walk out on that, or you're going to call somebody to come and get you, which is the other point. Well, the best medical device you can carry in the woods in this part of the country anyway is a cell phone. You can get your location on it, you can call for help if you need it, etc. But anyway, when you sprain an ankle, the standard thing for a sprained ankle is RAS. Rest, ice, compression, elevation. You're not going to have ice in the woods. You might have some streams that are good cool water. You can put that foot in good cool water. You can rest it. Only walk for short periods. Rest it as much as you can. Put a bandage around it. Tighten it up. Get some compression on it, and elevate it. Whenever you sit down, raise that foot above the level of your heart. Let the swelling go down. Make it easier on you when you're trying to get out. Snake bite. Okay, everybody's heard all kinds of different remedies for snake bite. When I was a kid, the remedy they said was to cut across the fang marks and suck the poison out. Well, I just tell you, I'm not sucking any poison out of anybody or any other body part. And that's not the recommended method either. If you cut it, all you did is compound the injury. Most snakes in this part of the country, most snake bites in this part of the country are copperheads. Copperheads are not generally a deadly snake. I don't know, the last time I checked, there were no known cases of somebody dying from a copperhead bite. What a copperhead bite can do is make a toe fall off, it can make a finger fall off or something like that. And you can make it fall off faster by doing the wrong thing to it. The best thing you can do for a snake bite, first of all, make sure you know what kind of snake it is. If it's a rattlesnake, you're probably going to have anti-venom. They do not give anti-venom for copperhead bites in general. So the best thing to do, you wash it with soap and water. Always carry some soap with you. And keep it low. Keep it below your heart. Try to keep your heart rate down. Excuse me. Try to keep your heart rate down so it doesn't spread so fast. It's going to be kind of hard to do if you've had a copperhead bite. Do your best to keep your heart rate down. And just keep it clean. That's the best thing to do with that kind of thing.
Question.
If you have an antibacterial or some kind of thing on it.
How about that, you know, a lot of people carry that sanitation.
That's alcohol, and if you've got a really open wound, that alcohol is probably not the best thing to do because it causes irritation of mucous membranes and that kind of thing. So soap and water is best.
Now, while he's on the subject of snakes, I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
But one thing I want to say, copperheads are very numerous right here where we're at. I've been up here in the evenings. They'll get out on the roads. They try to warm up in the night. You will probably, I won't guarantee it, but you're likely to see a copperhead before you leave here. So beware snakes in this area.
And they're not going to chase you as long as you give them a wide berth and walk around them, leave them alone. They're probably not going to bite you. There's an ounce of prevention. If you mess with them, they're going to mess you up. So don't mess with them. Broken long bones. That's another common one. Worked an ambulance call for a woman who walked in the entrance of Bad Branch Falls through the gate on level ground, fell between here and that side of the shelter, and snapped her femur in two. She was on her way to the falls. The falls are about a mile from the parking lot. So if she had done that at the falls, she'd have been in bad shape. A femur is extremely painful. That's probably one of the most painful places that you can ever feel. So, you gotta be very careful with it. You're not gonna be pulling somebody out of the woods probably with a femur break, because they're gonna scream and try and they're gonna hit you with something. It hurts. You're gonna have to splint. If you splint something, try to use something flat. Use a round brush, it's gonna put pressure. Split it and actually get a big knife so you have a flat surface. And put it on the leg. And put it below the joint and above the joint. So if they have a broken femur, you're going to bring that splint. You're going to straighten that leg out. Broken knee. Straighten that leg out. Make sure they have a pulse. Okay, the top of the foot, the ankle, and here are places that you can get a pulse. Make sure they have a pulse when you straighten it out. Splint it from below the knee all the way up to the hip. Okay, attach it to the belt if you have to. Make sure that whole leg is splinted. Wrap it good with bandage and pad it so it doesn't hurt. The best thing to do is call to get somebody to get them out, because like I said, that is a very painful injury. Dislocated shoulder, broken arm. Same thing. I told you on this, you splint it first. So you have a broken humerus here. You splint that down below the elbow, splint it as far up as you can, maybe tie that down to the chest if you can, and put that on. Put that on first, wrap the whole thing with something else to tie it to the chest so it doesn't move. And that'll keep them out of some of the pain.
And shoulders.
Yep, shoulders.
Elbows and shoulders.
Oh yeah, they're bad. Take a fall. If you're walking down a hill, feet fly out from under you down the hill and you try to catch yourself, these elbows right here, they can pop. So that's something you gotta splint, keep it good and steady. Gunshot wounds. Any of you hunt? I imagine most of you do. Such your bushcracking. Gunshot wound is a real possibility. Something that I've found over the years is that most of the people who tend to get wounded, self-inflicted wounds especially, are experts. They're the people who know everything about it. They're so used to carrying their gun that it's like an extension of their body, and they carry it with them all the time. Those are the people that end up getting shot a lot of times, because they forget that to take normal care sometimes. If you get a gunshot wound in the extremities, the arms, legs, most common cause of death from something like that is blood loss. You got some really big arteries. You got the femoral artery that comes in the inside of the thigh, and you got the brachial artery up here, radial artery, and those things bleed. If you get shot in one of them, you got to stop the bleeding. Major cause. You're going to put direct pressure on it first of all. Elevate it. If that doesn't work, you're going to put more bandage on it. Make sure it stops it. If it doesn't stop it, you're going to put a tourniquet on. They change how you use tourniquets every so often. People have probably lost limbs over the years because they told people the wrong way to do it. The latest on that is to put the tourniquet on and don't take it off. You can buy tourniquets that are ready-made. They've got Velcro. Put it around, pull it tight, turn the windlass, and then pull another strap over it. You pull it down until it stops the bleeding, and then you stop. You don't loosen it. They used to call for you to loosen it every so many minutes. They don't do that now. They learned a lot in Afghanistan and Iraq. The best way to do it is put it on there. The person may indeed lose a limb, they may lose a hand, but the choice is losing a limb or losing life. You're trying to save life and limb life if you want to. If a chest wound, that's a chest wound, often called, they're called a sucking wound, the sucking chest wound. And that when you breathe in, it pulls air into your chest and it'll collapse your lungs. So to stop that, you use a piece of plastic. Anything you've got in here, you've got a food wrapper, that's a piece of plastic or foil that won't let air through it, tape it over the wound. You put it on there, tape it down, but you leave a corner loose. And that corner will flap. If you've got it wrapped, when that person breathes, you'll watch them suck down to the wound. And when they breathe out, it'll float. You gotta make sure if it goes through and through, you're gonna have to plug both wounds. You can plug one of them with a regular bandage. You don't have to leave a flapper on both of them. Put a flapper on one of them so when they breathe and they breathe out, they'll flap. That takes care of it. Any bow hunters in here? Okay. If you get shot with an arrow or you fall on an arrow, you know, it shows them all the time pulling that arrow out, etc. Wrong thing to do. You pull it out, you're going to cause more damage, possible hemorrhaging, and then you've got the blood loss to deal with. As long as it's in there, it's going to plug off a lot of the arteries and veins that it hits, so you don't take it off. Now, it may be hard to walk out of the woods with an arrow like this, so the thing to do is try to break that or cut it as best you can. Without damaging that wound. Cut it down close, bandage around it, so it doesn't hit other things, doesn't snag on bushes, etc. They get that person out. That's the best way to do it. If it goes through and through, goes all the way out, like it will with a deer most of the time, you treat it like a gunshot wound. Same thing. Stop that bleeding. Direct flesh pressure. The main things, I said that bleeding is the main thing that kills you with a gunshot wound. Also, shock is the other one, and infection. During the Civil War, there were probably more people who died from the infection of minor wounds than there were people who died from major wounds. So you got to keep it clean. Hopefully, if something like that happens, you're not going to be out in the woods for a week. But if you're out in the woods for a week after something like that happens, you've got to stand a good chance of being with if you don't take care of it. And let's see. So we'll go back now to the more serious ones. I'm not doing no time here for this. We're doing real good. Okay. We'll go back to the 4 major causes again. Falls is the first one. What kind of injuries you expect to see from a fall?
Broke bones.
Broken bones. I already went over how to deal with some of those. You're probably going to have a lot of torso injuries too at the heaviest part of your body. And if you're taking a long fall and you're going to have broken ribs, possibly spinal injuries, punctures, etc. Yeah, you may have a punctured lung. I'm not going to go over how to do a chest tube or anything like that, but like some of these wilderness first aid classes do. I'm not going to teach you to do a trach, but the best thing to do is try to get them out of there. Get somebody to come and get them out of there so you don't get spine damage. If it's an emergency, if that person falls in the water and they're going to drown, by all means drag them out. Life-threatening, get them out of that life-threatening situation as quickly as you can. Otherwise, the best thing to do is use that cell phone. We had a guy who ran the mile out of Bad Branch Falls on the trail barefooted. When his girlfriend fell, he ran out there and then ran back. So, you can, one way or another. You're going to have a lot of bleeding. Again, direct pressure is what you use for a lot of that. The tourniquets, if you have something really major on the limbs, don't put a tourniquet around the neck, of course. Well, some people you might. You keep them with direct pressure on the wounds. And head wounds, a lot of times, bleed. They look like they're bleeding a lot. You have a lot of, blood vessels in your head, not a lot of tissue in your head. So if you get a cut up here, it's gonna bleed, you're gonna bleed like a stuck hog, and it's not going to, really amount to that much. You put some pressure on it, it'll stop. You can have a not so serious wound that looks like it's a heal if you have a minor resistant heal. Heart attacks, again, you know, try to talk to people who are like me and got too much hanging over the belt from going out into the woods right now. You know, let them go short trips till they get acclimated to it, used to it. Don't try to hike the Appalachian Trail or something if you're in that kind of condition. Of course, CPR is the main thing. With early CPR and actually early defibrillation is the best, but you're not going to pay a defibrillator into the woods with you. So early CPR. I would urge everybody to get certified in CPR if you're not already. I'm not going to teach it. You do need to be certified to teach CPR, so I'm not going to show you that. But I'd urge everybody to find a class on it. If you're out hunting or hiking with a friend and they go down, you're going to need to take care of them. On ground, again, that's one of those things they've changed the methods over the years. They've had everything from pumping the person's chest to raising their arms to all kinds of different things. Generally, humans, especially in cold water, have a mammalian dive reflex, and it closes off the vocal cords. They close together and spasm, and you don't get that much water into the lungs. You know, you hear the oil of the water in the lungs going, maybe a couple of tablespoons, but most of that you close off when you start flying. So the best thing to do is rescue breathing. You get that person on the ground. If they're still in the water, if you can get them to float, and you can give rescue breaths while they're still in the water, give them while they're still in the water. Rescue breaths, you don't have to blow enough to rupture a person's lungs, but you've got to get a good deep breath for an adult. For a child, it's a little less. You know, for a child, you may, you know, and for an adult, it's, you know, blow those lungs up, try and get the reflex to ease off so they can get some air into their lungs. And exposure. Oh, let's see, also on drowning. Cold weather drowning is not necessarily, a person isn't necessarily dead when you pull them out of a cold lake or a cold river. Again, because of that reflex, it takes most of the water out, but it also slows your metabolism down. So in EMS, they have a saying that for drowning victims, cold water drowning victims, they're not dead until they're warm and dead. If you can warm that person up, they may have been in the water for 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes. If you can warm that person up, you can give them good rescue breaths, warm, humidified oxygen on an ambulance or whatever, they might still live. So you get that person out of the water, don't give up on the rescue breaths just because they don't have a pulse. They may still be able to survive. And finally, exposure. Of course, everybody knows, everybody's heard of hypothermia, but you can get hypothermia at 55 degrees outside. You can get it higher than that if you get wet, like 60 degrees if you get wet and you stay wet, you can get hypothermia, particularly if you've got wind blowing over you. Air movement's the enemy. So the best thing to do, especially if you get wet, it sounds counterintuitive, but take your clothes off. Get those wet clothes off and get a fire built. If you can dry yourself out, warm yourself up, you can head it off. But you don't have a lot of time because you start to lose your mental faculties very quickly. So with hypothermia, build a fire, get the clothes off, hang them by the fire to dry out, sit by the fire and get yourself good and warm to stop that. I don't have anything else on my list today to teach you. Any of y'all have anything that you want to know about? Tab, you have allergies, like bee sting or anything like that? You do? You carry an EpiPen with you? Be sure and carry an EpiPen, even if you're not allergic to bee sting. If you're allergic to, what about poison ivy? Any of you allergic to poison ivy pretty badly? All right. Poison ivy can actually be deadly if you get it up around your face. It can swell your mouth shut and your throat shut. Diphenhydramine is a good thing to have with you in the woods. If you know you're allergic to something, Benadryl, that's what it is. You can buy it over the counter at Walmart. It's 25 milligram tablets. You get in something you know you're allergic to, take 2 of them right away. That's 50 milligrams of Benadryl, and it's going to start to help a little bit maybe. That's the first line before you do Epi on an ambulance.
I'll share a funny story about allergies and
Okay.
stuff. Some of y'all know that Brenda and I recently got married. All right, we did it in a little cabin, rented up in Red River Gorge, right there in Slade. After everything's said and done, you're gonna record this, aren't you? After everything was said and done, several hours after we had eaten, went to bed. It had been a bed and been asleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night coughing. I mean, I was gagging and coughing. I thought, man. And after a little bit, I thought, man, I've coughed so hard, I've made my tongue sore. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. So I went in the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and my tongue was swollen. In fact, it was swollen so much it was almost round. So think about your tongue's generally flat, but it was almost round. And I had a little bullseye mark back on my hip from some kind of a bite. Now, after 60 years, I have no known allergies that I knew of. I still have an unknown allergy, but something bit me during the night, and I went into a full-blown anaphylactic reaction. And I woke her up, honey, I think I'm going to need that Benadryl. You know, but Benadryl, while it's not the frontline drug for anaphylaxis, given in a larger quantity and frequently, it will work. And I ended up taking a couple of Benadryls, and about 2 hours later, took another Benadryl, and another Benadryl. About 4 or 5 hours, I kind of settled back down, and things back to normal. So, even if you don't have allergies, or know that you have allergies, that's a strong piece of advice as far as carrying the Benadryl. Because if for no other reason, you're 2 days into a 5-day hike, and all of a sudden, something has triggered your sinuses or your body to create, you know, this reaction to your environment. Being able to take a couple of Benadryl will certainly make it easier on life.
Make you a lot less miserable.
Yeah. Your body's histamine reaction can be triggered by dozens and dozens of things. Bites, stings,
Something triggered mine while I was talking here a minute ago. Pollen, apparently.
So you know that Benadryl. But that's just my funny story about Benadryl and the uses of OTC. Over-the-counter drugs that you can buy. You know, check the dates on them, keep them current. The dates are not really absolute. Many of the medications will work if they're even as much as a year out. I wouldn't push it too far. I know the Benadryl I took that night was about a year old. And but it's a great little thing to have in your backpack. It may make your life.
Ibuprofen is too.
Yeah, I was going to say ibuprofen, Benadryl, ibuprofen, simple aspirin. Actually, instead of carrying a bottle of full aspirin, carry a bottle of baby aspirins, because they are the low dose. Same thing as the low dose that you get prescribed after you've had a heart attack.
If you have a heart attack, if somebody has a heart attack in the woods, you can give them 4 of those 81 milligram baby aspirin. Have them chew it up, don't swallow them, chew it up.
Yeah, because
that will thin down the blood and it may head off some of the worst effects.
Yeah, because you can chew up the little orange flavored aspirin. Of course, if you're having a heart attack, trust me, you'll chew up some of them rocks to get out the vein of it. But have the aspirin, the ibuprofen, Benadryl. These are the 3 that I think you should have all the time in the woods.
Absolutely.
And then some kind of calamine lotion or some kind of topical thing that you can put on to get rid of. I think you said you had something in there.
Yeah, these little kits have that kind of thing in it. the jewelweed is just one of the natural remedies that you can use if you don't happen to have that with you, but, you know, these have, adhesive tape, Band-Aids, ibuprofen, diphenhydramine, you know, little bandages.
What about anti-diarrhea? What's your opinion on keeping anti-diarrhea, like Imodium with you?
If you could, I mean, if you really have something bad, but generally you're better off to just get it out of your body as quick as you can.
Yeah, diarrhea is just your body trying to correct the problem, so you have to push fluids so you don't dehydrate. But if you take something to cause your body to shut down that natural response, then you may actually be causing yourself a little grief down the road.
You're going to stay sick longer.
Yeah.
If you drink plenty of water, go light on food, then you're probably better off. Something good to carry in your pack for that, just for that kind of thing with the bouillon. Mix it up with a little bit of water, cook it over the fire and get it warm and drink it. Yeah, low sodium. Low sodium bouillon. That's all I got, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Sam.